Hi there, graders. It's good to see you. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend and you had some time to rest, and I hope you had a nice Mother's Day with your moms. So let's go ahead and get started with our problems for today. We are going to look at DMA. We are in week 32, guys. Wow, weeks are flying by. And we're going to be doing day 1. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first set of equations. And those are going to start with our first problem of blank. So we don't know what this number is, but we know that when we divide it into 2 equal groups, we get 7 in each group. Now remember, when we look for our total number of objects, we are going to use multiplication to help us find those total number of objects. So we know how many groups we have. We have 2 groups, and in each group there are 7 objects. So this is the number in each group. Now, together, when I take that 7 and that 7 and put it together to get my total, that tells me that I have 14. So 14 is my dividend that was missing here in this equation. So 14 is the number that is our dividend. Okay? So we're using our understanding of multiplication to help us find this total right here, which goes in that spot of our division fact. All right, let's take a look at the second problem. 5 groups of what is going to give me 30? Now, since we can switch these factors, because that's called the order property of multiplication, we can count by 5s to help us find out how many groups of 5 there are, or we can count by 6s to see how many groups of 6 it takes to make 30. So we can count by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and finally 30. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 groups of 5 or 5 groups of 6 is going to give me 30. And last of all, we have our multiplication sentence here. And we have 8 groups of 6. And we want to know the total objects it takes to make 8 groups of 6. So if I wanted to, I could count by groups of 6, or I could add 8 groups of 6. So there's 4 groups of 6. And I'm just going to do some reminding of you can break these apart. So 4 groups of 6 and another 4 groups of 6. We can also 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6. That's another 4 groups of 6. And what we're doing is we're using what's called the distributive property, or the break apart strategy, to help us find what 8 times 6 is. So I'm taking these 4 groups of 6, which is 4 times 6, and these other 4 groups of 6, and I'm going to have 4 times 6 and 4 times 6. Now, most of us know that 4 times 6 is 24, and so this would be also 24. And if I add these 24 with these 24 right here, I'm going to get, you got it, 48, because 20 and 20 is 40, and 4 makes 8. So 8 times 6 is 48. All right, let's take a look at our next problem. It's a time problem, and it says, look at the clock. What time will it be in 25 minutes? So they give us a start time. So what time is on the clock? Well, if you said 7:10, you'd be correct. Remember, your shorthand is your hour hand. We always look at the shorthand first, and that is 7. because it's not at the 8, it's between 7 and 8. So it's 7. Now we look at the minute hand. And remember, the numbers on the clock only tell us our hours. The minutes we have to figure out by counting by 5s. So remember that between each set of numbers is 5 minutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that would be 5 when we get to the 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when we get to the 2, that's going to be 10 minutes. So 5, 10, 7, 10. Now, they don't want to know what time it is on the clock. They want to know what time it will be in 25 minutes. So what I need to do is I need to think about my number line here. And I'm just going to draw a timeline up here. And I'm going to have my start time, which is going to be 7:10. And it doesn't give us an AM or a PM, so we really don't know if this is AM or PM. But we can add 10 minutes to 7:10, and that would be, right, 7:20. So that's 10 minutes. I need to add another 10. So this was 10 minutes. I'm going to add another 10 minutes to this 20, and that's going to be 7:30. And then I'm going to add 5 more. So I've got 10 and 10 makes 20 plus 5 more on to 7:30. So 5 more minutes is 7:35. So it will be 7:35 in 25 more minutes if we start at 7:10. So the time will be 7:35. That's our end time. So this would be our end time. Okay, that's our end time. All right, this is what we're going to do for the next problem. It's rounding to the nearest 10. Now, some of us are getting very good at rounding to the closest 10. Remember, do not drop off your hundreds place if you're rounding to the nearest 10. So I'm going to underline our tens place because that's the place value that we're rounding to. So remember, in your books, you still have that chart in your notebooks if you still are having a hard time rounding to the closest 10. So 653, if I look for 650, well, it's going to be between 650, which is already in my tens place, and 660. So if I look at my tens place, there's a 50 here. And that 50 tells me that that's one of the tens that I'm rounding to. And then my next 10, which is 660. Remember, between each of your groups of 10 is 5. So this would be 655. That's right in the middle. 653 is going to be less than this 655. So we're 3 away from 50, but we're 7 away from the 60. So this tells me that I'm going to round to the closest 10. I'm going to round down to 650. Now, if you notice with our next number, which is 307, we have a 0 here. And when we look at 307 is between 300 and 310. Remember, 300 is a group of 10 because it takes 10 tens to make 100, so it's one of those groups of 10. So 307 would be right about here, between 300 and 310. So 300 and 310. And again, remember, 5 is right down that middle. So this would be 305. And 307 would be a little bit past the 5. If there's a 5 in that ones place, this has gone past that. And so that tells me that I'm going to round up to 310. So now I'm going to subtract 650 minus 305. And I'm going to figure out it's going to be about, okay, it's about, what is it going to be about? So I'm going to take that 650 and I'm going to subtract that 305. And I'm going to use my algorithm down here to just show that work. So I know I cannot subtract 5 from 0. So that tells me I need to borrow a 10, and that leaves me with 4 10s. And I'm going to add that 10 to the ones place. So now I have 10 ones. And now I can go ahead and subtract 5 from the 10, which is going to be 5. And I can check my subtraction by adding 5 plus 5 making 10. That works. It checks. Now let's go ahead and go to the tens place. And my tens place, you can see that I have 4 and I'm not subtracting any. So since I'm not subtracting anything from that 40, I'm going to go ahead and bring that 40 down into the tens place. And then my hundreds is 300 from the 600. So I'm subtracting 600 minus 300, and that's going to give me a difference of 345. So when I round 653 and 307 to the nearest 10, I'm going to get 345 as my difference. Now, what I want you to do for your problem of the day or your discussion question, I want you to find the exact amount of the difference between 653 and 307. It should be close to the difference of 345. So let's see how you do on your subtraction for 653 minus 307. I'm going to look for your difference, okay? That's your discussion question for today. Let's take a look at our word problem for today. Our word problem says, Henry found 79 shells on the beach. So that's his total, right? That's how many shells he found. He gave his mother 34. So what's happening there? When you give something away or give something up, are you adding more